Hello everyone, and welcome to a super special episode of Designing Your Life, where we examine lives well designed by our community members and viewers just like you. I'm particularly excited today because I'm here with one of my good friends, Courtland, and he is not only a life designer and someone who has read the book, but he's also seen Bill and Dave live at Inform at the Commonwealth Club. I'll link that video in the comments here, and has really been a passionate member of the community for a few years now. So we're sitting here in lovely New York City. It's the summer, it's a little toasty. If you see us sweating, just see it as a good sign. It's not that we're nervous to talk to you, and we're very excited to share Courtland's story with you. So first of all, Courtland, what are you doing right now?
So currently I'm a consultant at McKinsey, and I've been there for about 7 months now.
And you were living where before this?
I was in San Francisco, now we're in my place in New York.
Awesome. So when did you get into designing your life? I know you found the book pretty early on. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I can't remember how I first heard about it, but it was somehow involved in my previous job. I was working at a online coding school called Block, and I was in charge of making sure that every student got a job at the end. And so I was always trying to make sure I understood things like what color is your parachute and anything like that. I tried to stay on top of, and then I heard about this book. I was already a fan of design thinking, just from entrepreneur life. And
so, living in the valley. I mean, there it is. We drink the design thinking Kool-Aid.
So
you should too.
So I ended up reading it, and I really liked it. It resonated with me. Just the fact that it's somewhat lean, and it just kind of worked. And I think I accidentally did it previously, but it wasn't as intentional as the book made it, which I liked. And so I started actually recommending it to students. And especially if a student was struggling and trying to figure out how do they actually pivot careers, we would buy it for them and send it to students whenever they were struggling, which they liked a lot. So
I didn't even know that, so that's awesome. Maybe take a pro tip from Courtland and buy all of your struggling students' books, or talk to us and maybe we can help fundraise if you need help with that.
And so then I remember hearing from you that you were also very involved in it, which was exciting. And so then I got to see them at the Commonwealth Club, and then in March of last year, Block, we were trying to cut costs. We ended up selling to a competitor, and I was let go. So that was definitely a shock. And
we all know that. I think I'm not the only one. I've personally been fired, you've been let go. I bet if you're watching this, you've had a dramatic job transition, and know that you have our empathy. It shocks even folks like McKinsey consultants when that happened, or future McKinsey consultants. So did you pick the book back up again then?
Yeah, I was kind of excited actually that I knew I had this framework that I'd finally get to put into use. And I didn't know what would come out of it, but I like this process. I was also a little bit, I was almost confused that I wasn't sure exactly what I would do next, because I didn't want to just go to another startup. It felt like that wasn't what I was looking for. That wasn't going to be a new challenge. And so and then I didn't know did I want to go into tech? What did I want to do with this? And so the idea of getting to use this process, that was really exciting.
Which activities in the book did you find most useful for your personal journey?
I think the one I liked the most, and I still find myself thinking about, was, I can't remember what it's called. It's when you map out 3 different versions of what their next 5 years could be.
Yeah, your Odyssey plans.
Yes, the Odyssey plans. That really resonated, that there's not necessarily a right next, but there's multiple versions of yourself that can all be happy in their own ways, and they're all very different. So I think that just sort of opened up my thinking to that, which I think is tough to do without some kind of process like that. That I still find myself thinking about and realizing when I'm thinking 5 years out and what do I want that to be, to not focus too much on what should it be, but what are all the options and what can that look like.
I think what you just said is a really good point, and I just want to emphasize that for viewers is never think about what should be. it's a multitude of things that can be and will be for you. And when we assume that we should be somewhere or our life should be somewhere, it can be extraordinarily defeating if we don't fit directly into that very specific definition of what we thought about with our 5-year plans. And I mean, I personally don't write 5-year plans because I'm not interested in that. I'm more on the 5-month plan and you know, with some goals for the very midterm, just because I understand how much life can change. So I think that that's really important. So was the life that you are currently living, was that one of your Odyssey plans?
I honestly don't know if it included a move to New York. There probably was one of them that was moving somewhere exciting. I've been in Northern California my whole life, so that idea of getting out for a little bit always sounded exciting if the right opportunity was there.
Yeah, interesting. So how did you know that this iteration, this current job that you're in, was going to be a life worth living?
Well, it definitely makes me think of prototyping. And I think just to come up with like what were the ideas that I was considering, I think the book recommends like 3 to 6 or something like that. I think after talking to you, you recommended doing even more of them. So I think I went with 12. So I had like 12 different ideas. I think one of them was probably professional musician, which was just there to like
yes, but why
kind
not?
of break myself out of any sort of preconceived ideas. And so talk to people in every one of those to try to prototype what would those ideas look like. I had a very like a planned out timeline for what would I like, when would I go from 12 down to 9 down to 6 and then down to 3, and so I would slowly like whittled it down to 3, and then I spent a while on those. I tried to like really put myself, I think it's also in the book, to just wake up and pretend that's your job, and even like talk about, like tell people, oh, I'm this, which is also kind of tough because I do think there's a little bit, at least in the Valley, there's a little bit of a negative connotation of being a consultant.
Yeah,
like it's a very like stodgy.
We're both consultants though, so at least we're safe.
And so I think like taking that on and owning that and realizing that okay, there is some stigma here, but I'm okay with that. Like I can handle that, and I like the idea of just being able to help people with things that they're not able to help themselves with, which I think as a consultant you get to do, and so that resonated.
It's not all bad. It's not all helping corporations do evil. We do lovely things. There's a lot of fun in what we do. So I think that's super awesome what you just mentioned, and I'm not sure that we've ever interviewed anyone that had a specific process for how they narrowed down between the different lives they could live. So how long was that time window when you're narrowing from 12 to 9 to 6?
It was generally a week each, so I'd go a week down to 9 and then another, and I actually was just reviewing. I had timelines of everything, and every week I would kind of put my thoughts into like together of like what are the goals for this week, and so I could see like get down to 9 and then I'd see it crossed out, so I know I must have gone down to 9 that week, and then I can see that.
Okay, well that's interesting. And then so did you do any life design conversations? Were you talking to other consultants in some of your other lives?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to have some either first or second degree connections that had done all 12 of the ideas, including consulting. It was funny
and a professional musician?
Professional musician. I think I like half interviewed some people that were very serious musicians.
Yes, awesome.
That were like trying to be professional at it. So I think so the hardest ones were like the really edge case jobs, like some kind of random like VC entrepreneur kind of thing, what got like difficult to find at times. But so for consultants, I did talk to some people that had been consultants, and they all told me not to do it. But then I asked them, well, can you tell me about a day in the life of it instead? I like that idea of not necessarily asking them for their advice, but trying to empathize with what their day looked like, and maybe the things that they didn't like, I wouldn't mind as much. So every single consultant I spoke with, I left thinking, okay, I think it even sounds better. Like it just kept sounding better and better and better. And I wasn't even sure. Most people told me I couldn't get it. I don't have an MBA.
I believed in you for the record, but
thank you.
Yeah.
And people said that, oh, I think you do a good job at this. This seems like this like fits you well, but I don't think they don't hire you. Like, they don't hire people like you.
Listen up if you're feeling like you can't do what you're trying to achieve right now, because Courtland is telling you that you can. And also don't listen to the people around you if they tell you you can't. Only listen to the people who tell you you can.
When I felt like worst case scenario, if I felt back to my second idea, that's totally fine, as long as I actually swung for the first idea.
Yeah.
And so I figured, okay, I'll swing for the first idea and see what happens. I was able to get interviews at all of them, and from what I've heard, once you get interviews at these top firms, like that's really where your resume matters and where that MBA matters. So I got there for all of them. I got to the second round interview, so it seemed like at that point it was somewhat possible.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get any of the other offers, but I lined up McKinsey as my last one because I wanted it the most. So they were all kind of
strategic.
practice.
You were warming up for
exactly.
your chosen.
And I still remember it was here in New York. They told me that I'd have to move to New York if I took the job, and then for whatever reason, like the mixture of like the weather and my preparation all just kind of like lined up right, and I did as well as I'm capable of doing in that interview. So that felt good, and then it worked out. That night I found out I got it.
Wow, so you got really good feedback very quick.
Yeah.
Were you nervous, or could you feel it? Could you feel that you were kind of in flow, and that if it was going to happen, it was going to be in this moment? Because you were prepared. I mean, you essentially designed your life to be prepared for this interview.
Yeah, I was definitely nervous, but luckily I'd had many interviews already, so I kind of had become more self-aware of the things that I do, speaking too fast, speaking too loudly, little things like that I'd figured out how to be a little more comfortable. Even I like power stances in the bathroom and like things like that. Like those all helped.
It's necessary, and when you're going for a big life change, every little bit helps. You know, I'll take it all. I'm one of those. Why not? I can power stance, power smoothie.
No shame.
No shame at all. So, what were the other lives that made it into that final three? What else were you considering?
So I remember the second one was a sales engineer. I struggle with how do I use the fact that I'm like an extroverted person. I love people. I'm energized by them, but also I'm very technical, and I have a software engineering background. So how do I somehow find roles that use both of those?
Yeah.
And so that was that software engineering, like a sales engineer. That seemed to be a good, like I think that could also still be in the future. I could do that. But it felt like this job doesn't like make it it'll only make me more successful if I ever do that. Where it felt less so the other way. So I felt like I'll swing for this. If it doesn't happen, I can be a sales engineer at one of those companies. I talked to a lot of large tech companies about being a sales engineer. And they all seemed very excited about having like someone like me with my background. So it felt like, okay, that does work as a fallback, worst case scenario.
Yeah, nice. So you definitely had a life that was practical. And a potential translation. So you mentioned something important, and something else is in both the book and in the workbook. You talked about your energy, and you get energy from people. Did you, throughout this process, check in periodically with your work, play, love, and health dashboards and your good time journal in terms of what was bringing you energy from these interviews and experiences versus what wasn't?
Yeah, that also, I really like the idea of doing that. I still think of that every once in a while. I think the play one specifically, I think it's somewhat obvious to think of like health and money and like relationships. Those always were top of mind. But thinking about the play part, that I had never been deliberate about making sure that I had enough play time. So that was really helpful.
What do you do now to make sure that you play more?
More piano.
Literally?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him to play for the video, and I'm not sure it's going to happen. But cross your fingers. Maybe if we can, if you encourage him in the comments of this video, we can get him to do a little performance for us sometime, maybe after some wine in the darkness.
Wine is needed.
In a follow-up video when Courtland's ready to make his next pivot. So that's good. So how often would you suggest people think about that? How often do you check in with that on yourself?
I should be more deliberate about the timing, because I think that'd be helpful. Currently, I think I want to do it every 6 months, like an actual full check-in. Like today I was rereading my, is it Work View and Life View, which is very interesting. It still all resonated, which was nice that me 6 months ago is still me today. But
it's not always the case.
Yeah, so that's, I think every 6 months, just to make sure. I feel like that'll help me feel confident that I'm not straying from some version of me that I want to be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I like that. Every 6 months, kind of check in, even the keel, and see where you're off at. That's about as frequently as I check in.
Okay.
Yeah. I should be better about it given my role, but the reality is I get to check in with all of you in the community and hear your wonderful stories, and in my brain sometimes that counts as a check-in for myself, which isn't necessarily true. But that said, what would you tell someone who is thinking about picking up the book right now, feeling really stuck, but isn't sure if it's going to be a fit for them?
I guess I'm thinking the most of what I heard from students when they were struggling with it. And I would tell them that just try the first couple of exercises, because I feel like people have a tendency to just read through it and then they're like, oh, I get it. And it's like, well, do the exercise. Even if it's just for fun, like just try it for 10-15 minutes.
Right.
It feels so weird to actually do what a book tells you to do for some reason, but that's I think the main thing.
I think that's great, because I think I see people flip through the book, and when we're feeling stuck and frustrated in life, sometimes our patience is very low, and we also feel a little hopeless. And so I'll see people flip through, oh yeah, this is cool. I mean, I think about this stuff sometimes, and then set it aside. And the difference in that camp of people versus the camp of people who screenshot their good time journals and send them to us, or are using the workbook. There is a workbook if you're not aware of, and it's actually the easiest way to follow along in tandem with the book and the workbook. Some of us don't like to write in the book. I'm one of those people. So if you're like me or you're an audiobook reader, we have that paper version, and it actually has a few extra activities in it, so I highly recommend checking that out. But it's amazing what just putting pen to paper or finger to keyboard. But I think really for DYL, for me, it was an analog experience. I don't know about for you, but yeah. I need to be able to really map out the weirdest version of myself.
I also think it was interesting. I had some friends, because I bought it for any friend that was like having a job problem, I'd buy it for them. And I also feel like some of them, they'll go through it once and they like do everything, and then they haven't like found their like designed life yet, but they did all the exercises and they're like, okay, so I'm done. And it's like, well, you don't have a job you love yet, so why don't, it's not a one time you're student.
It's not just like complete the assignment. And I think with a lot of people, they miss the steps of life design interviews, and once you start talking to people, you're beginning to network in the space that you want to grow to begin with, which I think is huge. But it also means you're communicating sometimes with strangers about your new dream. And I think when we articulate that, it becomes more concrete for us. And so I think one of the reasons I told you to have a million different lives was because that stretches us, and you learn so much throughout that process, versus if you just kind of talk to 3 people, your cousin, your uncle, and your neighbor about their careers. It's amazing how many people will listen or provide 15 minutes of thought if you just ask. Did you have trouble getting interviews if you could find the person?
Not really. It took a little bit of, it feels a little uncomfortable to reach out to someone, but I think
yes.
Like you feel like you're asking them a favor, but I do think they love doing it. I feel like I never get asked to do that, and like it's not like we're all spending all of our time helping people get their jobs. So it's kind of like a nice they'll value my opinion if it's like asking for directions. You never get mad if someone's asking for directions somewhere. You kind of get to show off that you kind of know the city and you know where to go.
It's such a good analogy. Yeah, I love that. It's true.
I think I heard that one from
them.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
Dave,
that.
you're all so smart. I think that may be the case, and I actually get asked a lot about that, and I think it's because I'm a public speaker and I work with kids, so the kids want to interview me to understand how to design this type of unconventional career that I have as a consultant. So it's cute. I actually got an email this morning about it, and it warms my heart. So that being said, you just saw a really natural reaction. I do get a fair bit of life design interview inquiries, and I'm flattered every single time. And whether or not I have the time in that moment to schedule it immediately, or whether or not I tell them to, ask me again in 3 weeks, which you shouldn't be ashamed to do, and don't take it as an insult. I mean, I'm slammed. I want to be able to, and a lot of the people that you're talking to are very busy. So don't be afraid to be diligent and to be vigilant and persistent in your pursuit of talking to folks, because I truly have never found, in 3 years of working on this project, I've never found anyone who was grossly offended by the idea of someone asking them questions. No one's going to get mad at you for curiosity. There's instances in which people don't have time, or maybe they're not the right fit from a professional perspective, but we don't have really any anger in the community, so don't worry. The worst case scenario is someone's just too busy. There's not a situation where someone's going to get angry that you admire the life that they've designed. That would just be ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the only way they'd show if they were busy and kind of didn't want to, like they were willing to be nice, but they didn't love the idea, is the timing would be like very, very inconvenient for me.
Yeah.
Like it'd be like, okay, let's chat Friday night at midnight. Okay, apparently that's
yeah.
why I'm gonna do this call because I value them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and if you are the one asking for interviews, just be flexible, very much be flexible, and always offer to purchase or provide a beverage or whatever it is. And you don't have to take them out for a $400 dinner, but you should try and save up so you can at least buy them a coffee or a smoothie. They're giving you what is probably very high value per hour time for free, and respect that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any other advice or thoughts for folks feeling unstuck? Here's a question for you. How long did it take you to go from immersion for yourself, kind of that second time, not just as a fan and as an advocate and a community member when we started connecting about this, but rather when you started to take it seriously yourself, from that point to accepting the offer and moving to New York? How long are we looking at?
So mine was 3 months.
That's fast.
Oh, okay, that's fast. Okay.
That's super
I felt
fast.
like I looked at my bank account. I wanted to give myself both a buffer in case like my first or second idea didn't work. I also wanted time for, once I figured out what I wanted, that I could prep for interviews. Mm-hmm. So I think it was 3 months of figuring out I wanted to do consulting, and then another 3-4 months of preparing for those interviews, mm-hmm. and actually doing all the interviews. But yeah, 3 months.
Wow, yeah.
But also, it was my full-time job, which maybe, like, I didn't have a job.
Right.
So maybe it's a little, I think you can move faster when you don't also have 40 hours a week.
Yeah, so 6 months end to end, basically, 6-7 months, you had gone from getting laid off, the moment of doom, to accepting a great offer in a new city at
mm-hmm.
McKinsey here in New York.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty sweet. So what that means is if you're feeling stuck right now, you could unstick yourself before the end of 2019 or very early in 2020, and all it takes is starting today. Any other advice for life designers?
I guess the only thing is don't think for some reason you're in a situation where this doesn't apply. Everyone thinks like they're in some kind of like, oh no, but for me it doesn't quite work because whatever, like family things or life things or health things. Like, I think it's valuable for it. Like, we all have our own struggles, and I think it's valuable for anyone to go through the process and the thinking that the book offers.
I love that. Thank you for that. It's great. It's a great endorsement. And I think the other thing too is you can really revisit it. There are certain activities and parts of the book that sometimes aren't resonating with me in a given circumstance, or largely due to my attitude, not due to the tools. But then I find that I'll pick it up, and I almost always travel with it or the workbook, just because you never know when you're going to be struck by something and want to make sure I catalog, wow, I really felt empowered in this super unique situation, got a lot of energy from it. It both hit my work bucket, my play bucket, and I feel healthier because I'm getting so much from this experience, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fluid process too. You don't have to read the book linearly, and you don't have to read it all at once. And there's no right or wrong way to engage with the content. Anything you'd like to plug right now?
No, come visit New York. It's crazy here.
Yeah. Yes, I guess this is actually our first interview in New York, which is really fun. We've done quite a few different videos from different cities in America and actually around the world. But this is our first one in the Big Apple, and I'm so glad that it was with you.
I think interviewing a consultant is very appropriate for your first interview here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely. Traveling consultant, no
Yes,
less.
exactly.
So thank you all so much for tuning in for this wonderful episode of Lives Well Designed here on the Designing Your Life channel. And thank you, Courtland, for sharing your story with us. I'm legitimately so proud of you and the life that you've created. And it's convenient that I didn't have to bribe you to use this framework to do so. Yeah.
Good luck, everyone.
Yes. Have a fabulous rest of your summer or winter, depending on your hemisphere. And if you have any questions for Courtland, I have no problem pestering him for them via text message, and we'll respond in the comments. So do leave any anecdotes or thoughts you have, and we will follow up and make sure that you get answers if Courtland's willing to share them. Take care, everyone, and best of luck designing your lives.